Hello everybody, Rabid Hedgehog here. This will be a slight disclaimer. I apologize that I lost the audio from these videos because of the fact that the adapter that goes onto the adapter to switch to external audio did not work. So I got this. When I was expecting nice clear audio. So please bear with me. I'm going to do a voiceover on these particular ones, but I did ride these motorcycles and I want to share with you my thoughts. So anyway, let's roll the opening and let's get to that review. What's up everybody, this is the Rabid Hedgehog and this is going to be the ride and review of the 2019 FXDR, the not actually a Dyna, but kind of a Softail version of the muscle cruiser Night Rod. Maybe, potentially. That's kind of what this bike looks like. It kind of looks like a hodgepodge of all those bikes put together. So we'll kind of take a look around at these pictures here, and you'll notice that on the front end it has kind of the air dam that the Night Rod had at the very bottom of the down tubes. This is actually not a liquid-cooled motorcycle like the Night Rod. It is oil air. It does have the Milwaukee 8 114, so it has the big snorkel type air breather on it, kind of like the Lowrider S. It also has that forward-mounted peg structure, as the Night Rod did, or the Softail Slim S, if you want to go to that one. Does not have the mid-mounts of the Dyna Lowrider S, but it does have kind of that front bullet cowl, a little bit more modified, a little bit more modernized, the inverted forks, and the big engine like the S variants of those lines of the Dyna line and the Softail line. Instead of having the standard 107, 114 instead of like the old ones with the 103 to the 110. So when you look at it that way, this bike really does seem like a replacement for all three of those motorcycles at the same time. Now when it comes to the riding position, it doesn't ride like the Softail Slim S at all. It doesn't have the same seating or anything like that. Definitely not as low. The Softail Slim S was known to have an extremely low seat height, and when it comes to that, you look at this one having about 3 inches more of seat height than that Softail Slim S. So the seat height on this motorcycle actually comes in without any weight on it at 28.5 inches. When it settles down on the suspension, it's about 27.7, so you lose almost an inch there when you set down on her. And then when it comes to the engine, there's not really that much difference between it and the 110, especially fitted to the Lowrider S. So this engine here, and this is all we have, is the torque variants from Harley-Davidson and everybody else, because that's all they report. But when you look at the torque of this engine, you have 119 foot-pounds of torque. The Lowrider S was at 116, and the Softail Slim S was at 109. So you have that 116, 109, and then this one 119. And the Night Rod, if you want to throw it in there, was around 85 to 87 foot-pounds of torque, which means that the Lowrider, or the Lowrider and this bike and the Softail Slim S, excuse me, all had better torque power. However, those bikes are in the basically mid-80s to maybe low 90s in horsepower, whereas the Night Rod was 125 horsepower. Now, when it comes to the weight of these machines, you're looking at the machine here, the FXDR, having the 668 pounds in running order weight, whereas you look at the Lowrider S, and that bad boy came in at 674 pounds, so ever so slightly more. But you look at the Softail Slim S coming in at 712 pounds fully loaded. So this one's definitely way lighter than that one. And the Night Rod came in at 666 pounds with a 5-gallon fuel load. Now this one does have a 4.4 gallon gas tank somewhere in there, so not as big as the Night Rod's gas tank. However, the fuel consumption is a lot better. You're looking at somewhere around the 40s of fuel mileage. 46 is what Harley-Davidson claims, whereas the Night Rod literally got 37. And promise you, as an owner of the Night Rod, I only got like 32, and I got up to 42 once. So that 37 around town maybe will never happen, but mixed riding it could. Like I said, I got into the 40s at least once. So definitely crazy. So this bike does have, kind of like the Night Rod, an inverted fork and the 19-inch front wheel with a 240 rear. This bike is ever so slightly taller and ever so slightly longer and ever so slightly wider than the Night Rod. Now, when it comes to the seating position, this particular bike sits very much like the Night Rod in that clamshell position, with your legs out and your arms are kind of tucked in and, a little, straight out from your elbows. So you sit kind of in a clamshell, if you can imagine that. Now, let's take a look at the dash cluster here. The dash cluster on this motorcycle has the 2.14-inch LCD screen, and what comes in that screen that you can read is a speedometer, gear, odometer, and then if you flip through the left toggle switch, you'll see a trip odometer. There'll be 2 of those. You'll have range left over, and also a digital tachometer and so on. And then, of course, you got that fuel range, like I said, and a gear indication. Now, on the right side of this motorcycle, it has the standard typical Harley-Davidson controls, where you have the kill switch on that right side. You also have your start button and your hazard and your right turn signal. And like I said, on the left, you have your toggle through on the information. You have your horn and your brights and your left turn signal. Now, below that 2.14-inch screen, you have the rest of the panel of lights, and that comes with high beam, turn signals, neutral, low oil pressure, engine diagnostics, ABS, security, low battery voltage warning, and low fuel warning. Now, taking off on this bike, the one thing I will note is that the torque definitely does show up right at the bottom end. This bike will pull immediately off the line, and it is very quick at it and very smooth. It's actually a very nicely balanced motorcycle when it comes to that. Compared to the Night Rod, though, the Night Rod did not take off as fast as this motorcycle, not by any means. Of course, it is down on the torque side of it. However, when the Night Rod reaches midpoint, it comes alive and can scream all the way to the 9,000s before hitting a red line. Whereas this motorcycle, right off the line, you have immediate power. As long as you keep it in that lower rev range, say in the 3,000s or so, not going up to the 4,000, 5,000 mark, but you keep it in there, this bike will scream because that torque is there all the time. But anything above mid-range to high, where it redlines into the 6s and 7s versus the 9s, this bike definitely does not feel like it has the top end speed. Of course, I'm not able to confirm what top speeds are. I know the Night Rod in some cases could reach into the 150s if you did it right. Most of the time, though, for most conditions, most engines, most riders, 140s was reachable. But this bike, this FXDR, does not seem to be able to reach that top speed when filling it out. Like the rest of the Softails that I've rode, this particular one in 6th gear does not really have a pull to it. That is more of a cruising, get gas mileage style of gear. You definitely have better power and lower range as long as you're at highway speed. You definitely want to stay there. If you need to, drop a gear, and that way you can get past everything without a problem, then go back to cruising by clicking over. Now, this is something I find interesting that Harley-Davidson did not include on the FXDR that was included on the other S models. And this is kind of interesting because this is the 114, like the other ones had the 110. So this is the special engine that goes into the bigger cruisers like the Road Glide Special and the Street Glide Special. And it used to be the CVOs. The very first year of the Milwaukee 8 CVOs had the 114. But this motorcycle does not include cruise control like the other S models. The Softail Slim S and the Lowrider S came with the 110 Screaming Eagle engine, which was the CVO engine of its era, and that actually had cruise control, and they actually included it because those had the electronic throttle, and so does the FXDR has electronic throttle. So it's an add-on on the FXDR, which is sad and disappointing. Because when you think about this, this motorcycle starts at $21,349. That's without the color package, which is $21,749. So it adds basically a little over $400 there. And why on earth does it not have some niceties to it? Because let's face it, this motorcycle is priced more than a Road King, than a Heritage Softail, than, the Sport Glide that all have cruise control and other amenities like bags and windshields or fairings, even on some of the street glides, that are very, very close to this price. These things have fairings and cruise control and radio and all this other stuff, and this thing is a simple motorcycle. And that kind of bothers me about this motorcycle is that it's truly way above the price of anything around it. I mean, its competitors in terms of being a power cruiser is the VMAX, which starts less than 18, and also the M109R, which is cheap compared to this. And those bikes are going to outrun this one all day long. And yet you're paying so much more money for this bike. And it's not really that special. Now, I will say that it does have a cable-operated clutch versus a hydraulically actuated clutch, which is what the Softail or the FXDR, or excuse me, the Lowrider S. I need to get back to that because, sorry, FXD to me is Dyna, FXS is Softail. So I want to kind of look at it that way, but unfortunately it kind of gets crossed because, yeah, they named this one after that. But this one is a cable-actuated clutch. Whenever you're coming off into the friction zone is roughly about a halfway between the full travel of that clutch. So as you release it, halfway off the grip, halfway to the end of the travel is where you find your friction zone. So riding around on it, the suspension is good. I will admit that it is on the tighter side. It's definitely a sporting suspension. It does have a adjustability to it for the back. Real easily, off to the right-hand side, it has a knob, and you simply turn it for preload adjustability. You can turn it in, turn it out, whatever you need to do. The front is not adjustable, but it does handle the bumps very well. Now, the braking on this motorcycle, it does come standard with ABS. It is very good system. The brakes work very well, both front and back, separately. They both bite really well. The front works very well as well. And if you apply them together, of course, it stops really quick. Very good braking. And the engine braking on this motorcycle is also fantastic as well. So the rideability of this motorcycle is very good. It turns really well. It does have kind of a lower lean angle than most motorcycles in the Power Cruiser, but to be honest, it's not terrible. It turns really well. It doesn't touch down very easily. It's not like the Softail Slim S that you drug the floorboards pretty much immediately. It really does actually get into the corners, and it does it very well. Visibility out of the mirrors is very good too, left to right. You can see really well. However, if you are a little bit wider than me, we had a guy that came in after I rode it, and he said that definitely he couldn't only see anything but his elbows, so he didn't like the visibility. For me, though, it worked out really well, and I could see just fine with this motorcycle, and it worked really well. But like I said, when it comes to it, the power delivery is fantastic at the lower end, but it does trickle off very quickly when you get into the higher mid-range and stuff like that in RPM. There's another annoyance too of this motorcycle, and that's that air breather. This motorcycle is not going to go long range, period, because that thing is digging into your shin the entire time. And this is where the mid-mount pegs would have came into effect here. This is why Harley should have made it a mid-mount bike, so that way your knee and your shin could avoid the stupid air box they put on it, so it's not digging into you. That is an annoyance beyond an annoyance. So this bike is literally around town only, but I can't recommend it. And the biggest reason why is the stupid price on a simple motorcycle that's good for only one thing, and that's stoplight to stoplight, bar to bar, restaurant to restaurant, friend's house to friend's house, just around town. It is worthless on those long range trips. It just doesn't feel good. You might be able to take it out to the track, but then you'd want mid-mounts, or you'd want the mid-mount pegs again so you can get around the track easier. This bike literally is a one-track mind for way more expensive than it needs to be, when you can get a Heritage Softail that handles relatively well, where you can get a Sport Glide that handles pretty much the same as the FXDR, at least in my opinion it did when I got to ride it, and you don't have to deal with the annoying thing digging into your right leg. I mean, it has nothing to do with heat. There's not really any heat that was coming off this motorcycle. Of course, this day doesn't fairly test that because it was in the 60s this whole day. And I think actually at the time of the ride, we were at about 53 degrees. So it didn't really have a chance to get that hot. But it didn't put any heat down on it. There was no heat transfer from the airbox or anything like that. It's just that the way it dug into the leg felt uncomfortable and didn't feel right. So it makes you kind of sit on the motorcycle awkwardly. You're not on there straight. You kind of sit off to one side because of the way you have to handle that. And that's just messed up. When Harley has designed the Road King, the Heritage, even some of the street glides, not the street glide special, but they're just a standard street glide, and they're all cheaper, and the sport glide's all cheaper. They all have better accessories. They all have better things about them for the same price than the FXDR. That this bike literally is an unknown as to why it was made this way, why it was made for only a one-track mind. But I have to point out this problem, and it makes it sound like I hate it. But I mean, if you're looking for a bike that's great for maybe taking it in, modifying it as a pro street model, and turning it into your drag bike of your choice, that'd be the way to go on this bike. This bike is not good enough for regular road use every day. When you look at this market, really the M109R and the V Max are definitely better bikes. The Rocket 3 from Triumph as well is a better bike and more comfortable. It is a much bigger motorcycle, but it takes off better than this one. And if you want a bike that's big and lazy and comfortable, but yet fast, that's the bike to go with, not this one. And you're going to get it for like $4,000 cheaper than this bike. So when it comes to the FXDR, I cannot recommend it. I literally have to say that it's really only a bike for one track mind, and that's literally stoplight to stoplight, or taking it in and turning it into some sort of a pro street model for drag racing. Other than that, pretty much, I don't know why it was made. I don't know why it exists, and I do not know who would really want to ride it, because simply, I can't explain it. So, at any rate, if you have any more questions about the FXDR, please let me know in the comments below. This is the Rabid Hedgehog, and we'll catch you on that next review. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. And check out my stores at Teespring and TeePublic. Catch you on that flip side.